Tutorial. This is part 5, and what we're going to be doing in this tutorial is extending onto our animals controller classes that we started in part 4. Just to refresh you, I'll start the application. I'll start the application, and then we'll go to the index, and we'll start examining the create and edit pages. Now what we'll get into the habit of is logging into our application as well, so that we carry around a user ID. So we'll do that right now. We'll log in. Okay. Now once we log in here, we will I'll just keep using my standard user information. I've got test user and test user as my password, and we'll just log in. Okay, and you recognize that we're logged in because it changes our status there. Okay, we'll go back over to Visual Studio. We're going to stop. Now one thing that I noticed while I was looking at my code is that I forgot to set a couple of properties in my animals data table. Now in particular, I'm going to explain to you what these are. Now once this comes up, we're going to adjust a couple columns. I forgot to set the identity column for my animals table. Now the identity, what that means is that as you add on to your data, so in other words you create more data, what it should do is add an index to your table. In other words, this is the ID column. It should increment by 1 each time you add a new item to your table. So if we just right click on that and we go to properties, you'll see this identity specification here. It says false right now. That should be true. Okay, and I also noticed that my edit date was set to null, or allow nulls. Now we don't want to allow nulls in this. We want to force the value, so, or force the end user to add a value. Okay, so we're going to update that. Once we've completed the update process of the database, we'll change our model to reflect the changes. And you'll see we have a nice green checkbox there, just sort of indicating that we've done everything properly. Now, I'm going to go into the animal. I just right-clicked on my animal object there, my animal class, and I'm going to change this database generated option to identity. There's 3 options here. There's computed, identity, and none. This one is identity. We're also going to set that as our key. Oops. We're going to set that as key. Okay, and that just identifies that specific column as the key column or index column. Okay, now we're going to specifically start working through the create and edit views. From this area here, I'm going to just right click inside this. You see how I right clicked in this video? Visual Studio has this nice little ability to go to view. And what I come up with here is this view that accepts a model of type animal. Okay, and that means that when you feed an animal object into this view, the details of that animal object will display, and they will display using this partial helper here that displays a specific view, and I'll bring that one up right now. Okay, and it's called create edit right here, and that exists in animals, that is views, animals, and create or edit. Okay, and you see that that also accepts an animal object. So in other words, again, I'll put in this animal object, and it will display whatever is contained in that animal object. Now there's a few things that are important about this view. We have a name that we're going to put in. We also have an animal type that we're going to put in. But here's an interesting one. Create date and edit date. Those are they're more like audit fields, things that are for auditing your data, knowing when you created it and when the last edit took place. They're very valuable pieces of information, but there's something that is not particularly necessary for the end user to enter. So we're going to, I'm going to show you what these views look like currently. Okay, we're logged in here now. A little bit about routes. Routing in MVC simply goes by the name of the controller. So in this case it's animals, but it's not animals controller, so you understand, it's just animals. It's whatever is before the word controller. All right. Now there's a few ways to get to the index. The index is sort of the default, so it automatically will imply that you're going to the index. So in other words, if I type in animals/index, that's going to bring up my index. If I just type animals, it will also bring up index. All right. Now, we'll go into the create new method here that we talked about earlier. If I put in some information here about an animal, for example, that's all well and good. However, what it is implying is that I need to put in a create date and edit date. Now, me being the end user, I don't want to have to type out a create date and edit date every time I do that. So we're going to go ahead and change what information goes into those fields. And the way we do that, let's start with using the create field here. What we have to do, remember that view requires an animal object. So we're going to do new animal, and we set the create date, and we're going to just do date time dot now. Okay, and then we also set the edit date to equal date time dot now. Okay, and there we have it. Now, right now that the create method doesn't give the create folder any information, so we're gonna send it into the view. So if I run that one more time and push refresh here over on our create page, you see how I just simply refreshed it? You don't have to open it up every time and click into it. You can just go over and refresh the page. Okay, so what we've done here is we've supplied some default information for our object. Okay, now and in the next bit we're going to talk about hidden inputs, and you'll understand where this is going to. Now let's just add in some information. We're going to just add in a black rhino, and it's a type of rhino, rhinoceros. I'm just not going to type out rhinoceros. Okay. All right, good. So by doing that, we added in a new animal. I'm also going to do, let's say, great white, and we're going to make that animal type as a shark. Do the same there. Okay. So you see, we've got edit date and create date are the same, and edit date and create date are the same for each entry. Now, if I edit this, you will see what it comes up with is the information that was put in there before, okay, which is just fine. However, in the case of leaving an audit trail, we want to make sure that we know just when the person who edited it made their changes. So what we're going to do here is add in this little bit of code inside the model state valid if block, and we're going to put edit date equals date time dot now one more time. Okay, that means but when it feeds into the data context, its edit date is updated, and we now have a different edit date than the create date. Okay. Now, to deal with the fact that we don't want the user to be bothered by adding a create date and edit date every time, what we're going to do is use this little HTML helper called hidden for. Okay, and hidden for just takes this lambda expression that takes the model and the model.createDate and implies that information into the hidden for method. Okay, and we do the same for the edit date. So like I say, this information is going to be hidden, and again, it's totally unnecessary for the user to see that information. So let's run this, and again we'll go back over to our details here, and let's just edit the Rhino. Okay, so here we have the edit page. It comes up nice and neatly with just the name and the animal type available to us. Now that's important because once again, I'll just state it one more time, we don't need the user to edit any of that information. Just give myself a little bigger screen space here. Okay, so let's put a debug point into our edit post. So if I push save, what I have right now, I have an edit date before my assignment here. It says 11:04 a.m. is my current edit date. My date time.now will be 11:08. So if I push OK or continue, excuse me, I now show a time of an edit date of or at a time of 11:08 a.m. All right, and of course, you know, we have a lot of other views here. We have our details view. Okay, now details view, what that does is it accepts an ID, and the ID is related to the data table over here. If I show my data information, this is the animals data table. You'll notice I have an ID of animal ID is 1 for black rhino, 2 for great white shark. So when it comes in, I'll put a debug point there. So if I click on details on my index, you'll see that I have an ID of 1. And what that does is it goes into the data context and grabs an animal object based on an ID of 1. And you'll see if I debug this, my animal type is rhino and the name is black rhino. And if I continue, it shows me a nice page with all of the information filled in. Okay. Okay. Now, you may have noticed that there is one of the titles looks a little bit funny, and that is the animal type. Here says animal type every time it comes up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make that display just look a little nicer, and it'll still say the same information, but now it'll say animal space type. Okay, and a change I forgot to make earlier was this one here, the edit date. I kept that as a nullable. We don't want that to be nullable, so we'll just take that away, seeing as I'm already here. save that. Now if we go back over here to this one, to this page, the create or edit, you'll see it says label for and then animal type. What that's going to do is grab that display information and it'll display it to be the way we want it to look now. Okay. All right. So the computer's just running a little bit slowly, but we'll get it back in a moment. Okay. All right. So here we have it. It says animal type as our display. Okay. So that's it for this part. I'm going to make a few changes to this application now, and then we're going to continue on to part 6 quite soon. Thanks for watching.